The Netherlands, tiny market-oriented, predictable Netherlands, just did the unthinkable. They used an obscure 70-year-old Cold War emergency law to seize control of a Chinese-owned multi-billion-dollar tech company right out from under Beijing's nose. What kind of company are we talking about? Is it more like a European TSMC? Not really. They don't make AI chips. They're not even Nvidia. In fact, they're the manufacturers of the most basic electronic components like diodes, transistors, and MOSFETs. But here's the interesting thing. The Netherlands thought they could get away with stealing Chinese-owned assets in Europe. The EU stole $300 billion worth of Russian reserves, and that was kinda okay. Not much backlash from the rest of the world, except Russians. So Europeans thought, why not treat the Chinese the same way? China is not Russia, is it though? China immediately retaliated with an export ban. Now major car makers like Volkswagen, Volvo, Nissan, and GM are warning their global production lines could stop in a matter of weeks. This is the new front in the global economic war between China and the West, led by the United States. And in the middle of all of it is a company called Nexperia. Let me explain. So why Nexperia? Maybe you've never heard of them before, but they are an invisible giant. They specialize in something called discrete components like diodes, transistors, and MOSFETs. They are the electrical foundation, the humble circuit breaker in everything you own. And Nexperia is not just a player, they are the player. They control roughly 40% of the global market for the high volume parts. They ship over 100 billion components a year. You cannot build a modern car or almost any electronic device without this stuff. If you lose access to one diode, the entire $50,000 car doesn't get built. This is the difference between high-tech and foundational tech. And Wingtech, the Chinese parent company, is partially state-owned. Europe saw this ownership as a massive vulnerability, fearing the Chinese government was planning to yank the technological know-how right out of the continent. Now, the Dutch government couldn't just steal a company that violates every free market principle they supposedly stand for. They needed a legal loophole, a justifiable emergency, and the CEO, Zhang Zhusheng, handed it to them on a silver platter. Turns out the CEO was allegedly engaged in massive financial self-dealing. He was forcing Nexperia to purchase up to $200 million worth of unneeded wafers from a failing Shanghai sister company that he personally controlled. The court documents call it serious governance shortcomings. This was fraud, and the local European board tried to remove him and fix the situation. The Chinese parent company Wingtech blocked the move. That was the moment the corporate failure became a national security threat. So on September 30th, 2025, the Ministry of Economic Affairs acted. They reached back to 1952 and invoked the Goods Availability Act. This law was designed for Cold War shortages to prevent the public from running out of essential supplies. It had never been used until now. The Dutch government now controls Nexperia's governance, effectively banning the Chinese owners from relocating any company assets, technical knowledge, or firing key executives without state approval. They took possession. The message was clear: this critical industrial asset stays here in Europe, period. China's response was immediate and harsh. On October 4th, Beijing issued an export control notice. They simply banned Nexperia's Chinese unit from exporting finished components and sub-assemblies made on the mainland. They weaponized their own control over the global supply chain, saying the Netherlands was overstretching the concept of a national security. But the Chinese subsidiary did something else equally fascinating. They resumed sales, but only to the domestic market, and demanded all payments to be settled in Chinese yuan. This isn't just a political response, it's an economic decoupling move designed to isolate the Chinese entity financially from the Dutch-controlled parent. The global automotive industry is now caught in the crossfire. The European Automobile Manufacturers Association confirmed that car makers only have enough Nexperia chips to last a few weeks. And you can't just swap suppliers. To qualify a new chip, a process called homologation takes months of rigorous safety testing, weeks of inventory versus months of replacement time. That gap is where production halts live. Volkswagen, General Motors, and other car brands, they are all bracing for production stops. And the trend towards electric vehicles make it worse, as EVs use far more chips than combustion cars, up to 1,300 per vehicle. Most complex industry on Earth is being held hostage by the absence of the smallest, cheapest part. Here's the simple statistics. The global discrete semiconductor market was valued at over $42 billion in 2020 and is projected to exceed $111 billion by 2032, with a compound annual growth rate between 8% and 9.1% depending on the forecast. So what did this mean? The playbook has changed. On one hand, Nexperia case is a clear signal that Western governments are officially prioritizing economic security over traditional free market principles, using every legal tool, even the dusty, never-before-used Cold War ones, to secure industrial capability. For Nexperia, in a way, this means a forced divorce. The Dutch-controlled side is now actively hunting for new packaging partners outside of China to create a secure supply chain. On the other hand, this whole Nexperia blunder might just be Trump's negotiation tactic with Chinese. Hey, you lift the sanctions on rare earths exports to the United States and we will give Nexperia back to Wing Tech. This might be the deal. Still, for the rest of the world, this is a painful real-time lesson. In the new geopolitical landscape, industrial warfare is fought not with missiles, but with tiny invisible components, and that's why a fight over a diet in the Netherlands could hold the car you were going to buy next year. What do you think? Would the Dutch government justified in using a 70-year-old emergency law to seize privately owned company even if the alternative was China, potentially crippling the global auto industry? Another important question is, why on earth the EU let the US put such levels of pressure on the EU's valuable companies? Let me know in the comments below. If you would like to watch more videos like this one, please consider subscribing. Till next time, bye.